You're watching OTB TV, a service of Capital Off Track Betting.
Broadcasting live from the Capital OTB studios, this is Racing Across America with Seth Merrow.
Good morning and welcome to Racing Across America on this Sunday morning, the day after, as it were, the day after the Preakness Stakes, jewel number 2 of the 2022 Triple Crown, and it was a nice victory by early voting and a nice undercard of stakes performances as well, and going back to Friday, some nice performances there as well, and we'll touch on much of that with our guest this morning, Steve Bick. Of course, he was down in Louisville with the radio show for the Derby, and then this past week down in Baltimore for the PImilco. Steve, good morning.
Seth, good morning. Good morning, everybody.
And before we get into the Preakness itself, should touch on, obviously, the food side of things, which you've been tweeting out and tossed out a crab cake recipe on the radio, which is an annual event. So fill us in on are you a crab cake guy? Because when I look at your Twitter feed, you had some barbecue on there, it looked like, but I don't know if I saw a crab cake.
I had crab this week, but I did not have it in the form, really, of a crab cake. Tina did. Tina had crab cake Friday night from our place, G&M. I had crab in a couple of different dishes, including pasta last night, but not caked up, actually, for whatever reason. One reason is that crab is at $66 a pound right now. Lump crab meat, $66 a pound. And so the restaurants are, they're dealing with it as they can, market price and whatnot. But the barbecue thing you're referring to is Pioneer Pit Beef, which is a fabulous place. It's not really a barbecue per se. It's like a roast beef that's hickory smoked and then sliced real thin. It's a Baltimore specialty. Had a good week. Had the snowballs that I love. The icy snowball. That's one of my favorites. And it was a nice week in Baltimore. I love it. I love it down there. We're already in Jersey, making our way back, but we're going to Connecticut to stop and see my dad in Manchester. But it was a good week. Yesterday, actually, we ended up spending the day on the water at Chesapeake Bay. We took a boating excursion, and it was absolutely idyllic. I got to wait, and I watched everything and bet by phone. I was not spending the day there in 95-degree temperatures.
Yeah, that was certainly the concern coming into the weekend. The temperatures, it seemed like everybody came through it okay, and watching the crowd, seemed like the crowd was okay. But I get the point of being on the water and a nice breeze out there. We were hot up here as well yesterday and today also. But let's get into it. Let's talk a little Preakness and beyond, and we'll start out with the Preakness because I love your thoughts. Social media ablaze with a number of topics. One of them taking the Joel Rosario to the woodshed for the ride. I'm not sure I totally criticized the ride in that about 100 yards out of the gate, he's kind of looking to make a move, and if things don't close up, he may be able to get much better position. But he had a horse on the inside, a horse on the outside kind of close, and then his options were done. And at that point, he goes over to the rail, and he's sitting about 8th. And at that point, you felt, ooh, this is going to be a tough road to hoe. And it turned out that way. And I think getting up for second, because when you watch Epicenter on the turn, he has a lot of work to do. Early voting is going to get the jump coming into the lane. It turned out to be a very prudent move for Seth Klarman and Chad Brown to bypass the Derby and aim for the Preakness, as early voting now steps into that picture of top contenders on the 3-year-old scene. It was a great ride by Jose Ortiz. We're just watching him come out of the gate now, and he's going to wind up sitting second behind Armagnac, who's going to set all the early pace. Give us some of your thoughts on the Preakness.
Well, for starters, let's talk about the winner before we talk about the runner-up. Even though the runner-up is the 6-5 favorite, and make sure that we can circle back and talk about the insane betting because there's no explaining that toe tort. I mean, there is, I guess, because of the long shot in the Derby, but that was bizarre. Let's start with early voting and a brilliantly executed plan by Chad Brown, who recognized that he had a lightly raced horse that was going to potentially have all kinds of difficulty if they went to the Derby. The chance, he even said this in the press conference after the race, a chance to really ruin a horse by sending him to Louisville and having a dreadful experience, being part of what ended up being a suicidal pace. Absolutely correct. Every move that Chad made with this horse was absolutely brilliant and correct, even to the point where he was confident that early voting didn't necessarily have to have the lead in this spot. And so everything that they did, and that includes Jose Ortiz, who Chad actually praised and singled out for recognition because he was, as you might recall, on both Zandon and early voting. And when they both had to compete on the same day in April, Chad said, "You're staying with early voting." And Jose Ortiz said, "You bet, whatever you want." And so he was patient. He gets rewarded by winning a Preakness, and that's certainly got to be acknowledged. Jose Ortiz, 2 for 2 with fabulous rides in these first 2 legs of the Triple Crown because he gave Simplification a brilliant ride 2 weeks ago. Now he does everything right with early voting, who was absolutely ready to fire. So the winner was the winner, and the winner was much the best. Now we want to talk about Joel Rosario and Epicenter. I understand why Steve Asmussen is disappointed and frustrated. I think he'll get over that pretty quickly, considering all the other good rides and all the other good results that he got with Joel over the weekend. Joel Rosario, absolutely nothing wrong, and the idiots on Twitter and everywhere else are clueless. And anybody that's spewing venom at Joel Rosario doesn't understand anything about how races are run. What was shocking about the start of that race is that Epicenter was absent of his early speed that we had seen earlier in the spring. Joel was going for that slot that Skippy Longstocking simply beat him to. And so Joel said, well, I'm not going to hang around here. Let me go get the rail. Joel also recognizing that the rail was the place to be all day long. Speed the whole weekend was spectacular. And so getting to the rail and saving ground at that point was the prudent thing to do. Did it cost him a couple of lengths probably later on when he did have to kind of keep Epicenter on hold when he was pocketed? Yes. However, when he got the rail opening that he required and Epicenter started to go forward, he made up some ground, but he wasn't getting to early voting. And he got beat on the square. And so I don't want to hear that, oh, Joel did something egregious and it got him beat. It didn't get him beat. Early voting beat him, period. And he was second best on the day. And I'm sure that Steve Asmussen, after watching that race a couple of times today in the next couple of days, is going to understand what happened. So that's basically the race. I mean, the rest of them are all a bunch of, Hazarai. The Secret Oath, she ran okay. Luis Saez, I guess he thought that the move that she made against Phillies 2 weeks ago and the move that he made on Ethereal Road in the Sir Barton was going to get him the same result. That was idiotic. So, I don't think Louis did her any favors, but I don't think she was beating Epicenter and early voting anyway. And Creative Minister, nice move, gets a grade 1 placing. They paid the $150,000 to get in the race. Seems like it's a good move at this point. I mean, they got $330,000, so they doubled their money, and they got an American Classic race placement. So that worked. After that, there's not a whole digest. having Fenwick run in this race was embarrassing, and what they put that horse through was pathetic. And why? Yeah, I mean, I understand why you have to take the entry, but that horse had no business in the race. Happy Jack has now been beaten by 100 lengths in his last 4 races. What else is there to say? The top 2, much like 2 weeks ago, the top 2 were just clearly way better than the rest of the field.
Yeah, I agree completely, and I agree with your assessment of Joel Rosario. As I said, he was right there, and if that hole doesn't close, and folks watch the head on, you can really see horse on the inside comes out, horse on the outside comes in, and he has nowhere to go. And then, as you say, Joel says, I have nowhere to go. Let me head over to the rail. And so I wasn't as critical as the ride as a lot of people seem to have been. And again, I thought it was a big performance after that, particularly given where the horse was on the far turn. I thought Secret Oath was okay. She was at the back of the pack. It'll be interesting to see, what they do with her. Probably you'll look for her maybe up at the coaching club, American Oaks, back in against Phillies. She'll be fun to watch going forward. But early voting, a nice performance. And I pulled up your tweet from earlier today with the buyer figures, a solid 105 buyer for early voting. But as you say, the other story, I said there were multiple stories on social media, and the other one was the wagering, which was just insane. For a long time, Fenwick was sitting at about 7-1. Eventually went off at 13-1. There is no horse larger than 20-1. Some people early on were speculating, well, these are computer players, so they're dumping in money and they're going to cancel their bets. So people kind of think, oh, this horse is live. But if you really play that out, that isn't going to work. The casual bettor doesn't know that. And the real horse player was looking at these odds an hour before the race and saying, that's insane on Fenwick. So that wasn't going to suck anybody in. That was a bad theory. I think, as you kind of alluded to, there was that period going back a few years where we had a few long shot winners of the Derby. And all of a sudden, subsequent Derby years for 2 or 3 years, the long shots weren't the right place there either. I think yesterday in the Preakness, it just had to be a reflection, a reaction to the crazy price in the Derby.
Yeah, there's really no other logical explanation. And even in the 2-day double, in the 2-day double, Fenwick was close to 60-1, which is appropriate. Frankly, he was 13-1. He should have been 130-1. It's just and Happy Jack too. Happy Jack goes off at 12-1. Armagnac 18-1. Simplification 8-1. That was about right. Skippy Longstocking 12-1. That's fine. Secret Oath 5-1. Creative Minister 10-1. The insane value, obviously. If somebody had said to you on Wednesday, Thursday, early voting is going to be 11-2, 6-1. If you want to book that now, you would have mortgaged the house. It was inconceivable that he would be this kind of a price. The logic said that Epicenter would have been around even money, and early voting and Secret Oath would have been, fairly interchangeable at whatever, 3-1, 4-1, 9-2. Very, very strange, and one of those odd confluences of events that got you this board. For Fenwick and early voting to have been the same price, that close to post time, was something you may never see again.
Yeah, as I say, Twitter was a buzz, and I was out here doing an event in the race book, and people are walking up going, what's going on with Fenwick? And everybody was kind of agreeing it's just a function of what happened a couple of weeks ago in the Derby, but it was certainly a bizarre board. And I'm with you. I had Epicenter over early voting, and I was out doing the bankroll yesterday, and I had used them kind of an equal portion on some of the pick plays I had, and then I bailed out. I was kind of struggling all day, and I had a bunch of near misses that were disappointing, and I bailed out going big on the early voting epicenter early voting exacta, and that paid $25, and so I thought there was some good value there too. So it was certainly just a fun race and a good performance by early voting, but also provided some entertainment on the sideline with the odds story. All right, let's go back and take a look at the McKay Turf Sprint. Karatari got it done, and here was one of my near misses. I'll tell people I took a big swing with the Karatari 7 cents exacta, going back and forth with those. Karatari is going to be the number 2, Smokin' Jay the number 6, 7 cents the number 3, and my exacta just gets nipped under the wire. But Brian Lynch's runner, Karatari, I always say these turf sprints are a specialty. Karatari clearly proving to be a stakes quality turf sprinter, and did it again yesterday in the McKay Turf Sprint. And I'm just looking at your tweet here, a solid 101 buyer.
Yeah, 3-2 actually was a good price. Karatari absolutely figured. It was kind of interesting because they run a lot of turf sprints down there, and Karatari, when you looked at this and you looked at the pace scenario, absolutely figured to wire this field, and this one, pretty much played out. I actually laid out the top 4. I think I ended up with Grateful Bread second, 7 cents third, and Smokin' Jay fourth. This thing kind of played out the way you would have expected, more or less. But yeah, nice. I think third straight win now for Karatari? Yeah, third straight win.
Yeah,
third straight.
Yeah, as I say, talented turf sprinter. Sir Barton for 3-year-olds, and Wayne Lucas skips the Derby but elects to go in the Sir Barton, and because of that, the horse goes off at 3-2. B-Doc was interesting, certainly coming in off the solid maiden breaker over at Keeneland. That one's going to run second, and Mr. Jefferson runs third in here, but Ethereal Road. Chart margin just under 5 lengths. Luis Saez and Wayne Lucas gets it done in the Sir Barton again. Coming out of, and Wayne kind of commented, boy, after the performance, maybe we shouldn't have scratched, maybe we should have gone in the Kentucky Derby, but that's 2020 hindsight. I think they should be happy with the win yesterday, though.
That's a pretty ridiculous comment by Lucas. This bunch, other than really B-Doc and maybe a little bit with Mr. Jefferson, who was coming out of the Tessio, very clever move, and we'll probably talk about it, because Mike Trombetta ran 1-2 in the Tessio with Joe and Mr. Jefferson, and then he split them up, and he moved Joe to the grass. We'll talk about the Murphy in a minute, and I thought that was interesting that he separated the two of them, and Joe ends up winning the Murphy on the turf. So I thought, you know what, maybe Trombetta is going to end up sweeping these 2 3-year-old races. Ethereal Road, in retrospect, laid over this group. This was a real ragtag bunch when you looked at it separately. I mean, B-Doc is going to be a nice horse, and that maiden win at Keeneland for Joe Bessiker, and I was in pretty regular conversation with Joe Bessiker. He was on with me earlier this winter, and we talked about B-Doc, who we obviously named for Brian Dawkins of the Eagle, and always expected this horse to be something nice. He paid big money. But then he entered him in the sale at Keeneland, that sale on the Friday after the meet ended. And he ended up RNAing. He ended up being a buyback, but he took on West Point as a partner out of that sale offering. So B-Doc has got a nice future. What was notable about this win with Ethereal Road was the fact that this was the only performance where anybody made up any ground. The whole 2 days. I mean, the speed was just absolutely winning everything. And Ethereal Road comes from well back. And by the way, that's another reason why Epicenter's performance was quite good, because nobody else was making up ground. Ethereal Road did, and one going away, and I'm sure we'll see him, in typical Wayne Lucas fashion. He'll be put through the mill and run at every major stake from here on in. But I mean, the rest of this field below Mr. Jefferson looks like a bunch of allowance horses.
Yeah, and that's kind of what it looked like going into. You kind of mentioned this one a moment ago, and we're going to take a look at the Murphy now. And you and I were talking about it on the radio earlier last week, and mentioned Joe. And Joe, to me, was really interesting. Comes out of the win in the Tessio. And you said that coming right out of that, Trombetta was kind of not going to aim for the Preakness, and that they don't take the shot in the Preakness. But not only that, they go in the turf race. But then to read the comments in the articles last night, Trombetta seemed absolutely convinced that this horse was going to be a real turfer. Despite the debut, which they say probably a little too short, the debut effort at 5.5 on the turf, but returned yesterday. And Joe, coming out of the win on the dirt in the Tessio, going to be the number 10 horse here under Victor Carrasco, gets it done. I had these two flip-flopped. I had Ready to Perform on top and Joe in the second slot. And Ready to Perform is going to wind up second. Krebs and Beer, the number 9, third. But this is the kind, it must be fun to own a horse like this, because after a performance like this, the win in the Tessio, the options are kind of limitless for Joe going forward.
No doubt. And there was a lot about this that was notable. And, of course, Stuart Grant, Elkstone Group. Stuart, who's very friendly with President Biden, named this horse for Joe, and there was a lot of reasons to like this performance and to cheer this. You also got another great call. Dave Rodman had a fabulous PImilco week. Every single day, Dave, and listen, he's been doing it for, decades, 20 years. But Dave Rodman is probably the most underrated and underappreciated race caller in the entire. Was fabulous with all kinds of clever flourishes the entire weekend. This was a not just a good performance. This was a really good race, and Ready to Perform absolutely tried to come back at Joe when corralled, and I like this group. And even that Krebs and Beer ran well to be third. The 3-year-old Turk division is sort of in its, for the boys, it's kind of in its forming stages. But we'll see. This was a good jumping off point. But always happy for Trombetta to do well. And this declaration of war colt, Maryland bred on top of everything. And this was a very popular local win.
Yeah, fun to see. And Trombetta certainly makes appearances up at Saratoga, so who knows, Hall of Fame maybe. I love that. That's a subdivision I think is a lot of fun every year, the 3-year-olds on the turf, because there's opportunities really from January through the end of the year all around the country. So it'll be fun to watch. As I say, they have many opportunities for Joe. And I agree completely on Dave Rodman. I probably about once every 2 months or so I have to send him a text, because just in the day-to-day calling, he'll throw something out there. He'll make a little comment coming down the stretch, kind of a little pun that I kind of have a feeling that me and 3 other people probably got it. But I just appreciate what he does on a day-in and day-out basis. And as you say, had a nice weekend as well. The Chick Lang, 6 furlongs for the 3-year-old sprinters. I like Cogburn in here. As I say, I was doing a bankroll out in the front half, and the loss by Cogburn kind of cost me, because it cost me a Rainbow Six ticket. It was my only loss, as that one, Cogburn and Lightning Larry go out, and early in the running I'm thinking, why is this long shot trying to burn out my play in here, Cogburn, as they came down the backstretch, and Lightning Larry on the outside and Cogburn on the inside. I have a feeling if the post positions were switched, I might have been in a better position. But all credit to Chantal Sutherland. She went out there, dueled with Cogburn, and then kept going with Lightning Larry, who came up from the Florida base to get it done. Delgado, I believe I read it was his first graded stakes race, and first one for Chantal Sutherland in, I think, 7 years or so. So a nice performance yesterday in the Chick Lang from Lightning Larry.
Well, you can bemoan Cogburn getting beat all you want. The fact is that if you had a fair racetrack, Chasing Time would have run them both down. And when horses go 21-4, 44 flat, 56-2, I'm sorry. they're going to get caught on a fair racetrack. And Chasing Time and A Lot of Hope, they were coming, from further back and making up some ground late. But that racetrack, certainly at that point in the afternoon, that's the ninth race at about 3:30. Forget it. I mean, there was no running down anybody at that point, and certainly not in the sprint side of things. But Lightning Larry, the more you looked at that race from Tampa, and you certainly follow Tampa more closely than I do. That race actually that he was coming out of was okay, and he still had to improve. Make no mistake. I mean, he from a fig standpoint, he improved at least 5 lengths. So this was a huge effort, and I was actually happy for him. It actually knocked me out of everything. But I was very happy. Chantel Sutherland was clearly elated for this win, and Jose Delgado does a nice job. Jorge Delgado, and so it's great for him. And I just sort of threw up my hands and said, well, that's the racetrack, and because these horses should have been caught, just in a normal circumstance. But anyway, I thought actually the whole weekend I went back. I noticed this morning when I was posting the figures, I got beat in every single sprint race, every single 3/4 sprint race. And that's on you. Actually, to be honest, the Miss Preakness, the Chick Lang, the Maryland Sprint, those are usually races that I've traditionally had, really have made hay over the years, and got them all. So I got absolutely skunked on the sprint.
Well, I will say I had tossed Chasing Time, who was a nice closing third in there, and as you say, probably on another racetrack makes up all that ground given those early fractions. But I did not have Chasing Time in my mix originally, but I had pulled up your picks, and I was looking at picks from some other people, and you had Chasing Time on top. And I went back and looked at that horse on the cutback out of the Rebel in the Arkansas Derby. I threw that one into the mix because I thought it would be interesting as the other Asmus. But again, nice closing third, but just couldn't make up ground on the track yesterday. The dinner party on the grass. This one just played out the way you would anticipate. Although I was kind of surprised that Set Piece got away at 2-1. I had Set Piece on top, and I thought for me it was between that one and a Tone. Set Piece is going to make a nice late run to get up. Number 3 horse Tango Tango Tango, the number 1 second, and a Tone winds up third. So it's another of my bankroll plays as a Tone gets necked out of the exacta. It's another one of my bankroll plays where I just missed yesterday. But I did like Set Piece, and Set Piece looked pretty good for Brad Cox and Florent Giraud.
Well, when you sit down to handicap and bet this race, you're looking to beat Set Piece in here. The reality is that there was no pace on paper. And so you look at this and you think, all right, Set Piece is going to be potentially vulnerable. And obviously, you don't let Set Piece beat you. But I was a little surprised. I picked Tango 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 second as the best value, and I kind of thought that given Jack Sisterson in these kinds of races, his inclination is to understand what the scenario is. And I was a little surprised at how patient Tyler Gasleone was to let a Tone go ahead and set the pace, and it ended up proving out to be smart and a good approach to the race. Because when Tango 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 then, confronted a Tone, he was able to get by, but they just weren't gonna withstand Set Piece. And when you look at the splits, they did go faster. Those are reasonable splits for a 1 1/16 on a nice firm turf course. 23-2, 47-4. That is faster than this race figured to go. And so Set Piece did get more than enough of a pace to run at. And if you assume that there's going to be a reasonable pace, well then, okay, Set Piece is going to win. But really going in, it didn't look like you were going to get that kind of a pace. So good performance. Brad Cox had a very good weekend, obviously. And Set Piece goes on to the whatever the next assignment is going to be. 6 years old, and this Juddmonte gelding shows really no sign of letting up.
Took a shot in the 4-star Dave last year, so I would expect the possibility is very good to see him up at Saratoga. The ski pat, I don't think I called for a replay of that one, but we can certainly hit on it. Joyce Rocket gets it done for Asmussen, one of the aforementioned nice rides for Asmussen on the day from Joel Rosario. Joyce Rocket over Feed the Spree. Feed the Spree I thought was really interesting in here, and I thought she ran well, running second at 5-1 time limit, ran third, but it was Joyce Rocket, as I say, with a nice ride from Joel Rosario for Asmussen on the day.
Well, I like I said, the sprints were impossible for me these 2 days, and this is included. Joyce Rocket, I could tell when Joyce Rocket was taking money, I realized I was a chicken in a pot because I sort of have written her off.
I was in exactly the same boat. I'm right with you. I looked up at the board and I said, and then I looked at the form and I thought, I probably should have had that one in the mix.
Well, let's be honest. I mean, when's the last time she had won? December of 20. I mean, she was winless in her last 9. How much confidence can you have? It was looking at this field. There were plenty of others that figured more, and you certainly didn't figure that she's going to wire this bunch. So, Joel Rosario sees the opportunity. The way that racetrack was, 22-2, 45 flat. That's slow. I mean, that's a mundane pace for quality sprint mares going 3/4. So nice performance. I just shook my head. I said, I gotta, I'm gonna have to reboot from here.
No,
and that happened both days.
Yeah, I was right with you on that one. The Gallarette kicks off the nice birthday for Seth Klarman, which wound up a little bit later, obviously, with the Preakness win. But technical analysis for Klarman, Klarovich, and Chad Brown getting it done over Crystal Cliffs. To me, those were the 2 horses. I had them in flip-flopped order. I put Crystal Cliffs on top, but no shock here with a nice performance by technical analysis in the Gallarette.
Well, and see, if you overlay these splits versus the splits in the dinner party, you'll see what I mean about Set Piece having gotten enough of a pace. Technical analysis figured to wire this field anyway, and then she just went out and did it. I mean, this is a nice filly. I mean, Chad is just loaded with these. It's unbelievable how many of these types he's sitting on, and he'll have to really plot a course to keep them all separated this summer. My God, he's got to look at every condition book, from New York to Del Mar to find places to keep them all separate.
Certainly, of course, we will see plenty of them up at Saratoga. The Maryland Sprint, it was Jackson Traveler getting it done for West Point and Company and Asmussen, another nice ride from Joel Rosario. And I called for the stretch run. I probably should have called for the whole race because I don't think he beat the gate, but it was pretty close to that. It was 100 yards out. He had a pretty clear lead in there, and so Jackson Traveler kind of gets the great start and takes him all the way around. He's the number 7 horse. 3 over Deuces as the rank outsider runs second, and War Toxin runs third in here. But it was a nice performance for Jackson. And there we go. Dino, good job. Picked up the start, and as you can see, 100 yards out, he's clearly in front and takes them all the way. Jackson Traveler in the Maryland Sprint.
Well, he ran great, and that was a smart maneuver to take over. I mean, they obviously attacked this specifically with the idea of taking the race to Disco Pharaoh, who absolutely did not break the same way that we had seen, in these last few from him. So Ray Handel's going to have to come home and figure things out because that was very disappointing. Really didn't lift the hook.
Yeah, and as I say, Jackson Traveler here in the stretch is kind of dueling a little bit, but then what was the eventual chart margin wound up to be just under 2 lengths. So nice performance there. And again, it was Joel Rosario for Steve Asmussen. All right, let's take a look now at a couple of their 2 or 3 of the performances from Friday and get some thoughts there. The Black Eyed Susan. It's going to be Interstate Daydream, as you said. Brad Cox with a nice weekend for Ranchero. Only 4 starts under the belt, a couple of wins, a second and third place finish prior to prior to Friday, was the third place in the Ashland behind Nest. I think with the win, we're looking at kind of the second stringers here because the main players were in the Kentucky Oaks, but I think Interstate Daydream, with only the 5 starts and now the 3 wins in the Black Eyed Susan, jumps up nicely into the conversation of 3-year-old fillies. I used Luna Bell. She had trouble at the start, and she just never was in this one, which was kind of unfortunate for the hometown filly, but it was a nice performance for Interstate Daydream.
Well, what we talked about all week coming into this, and because this was a very fun betting race, and there were a lot of people that had every reason to latch on to various price horses and take shots. That's what was so much fun about Friday, and frankly, why Friday felt like a better betting card than Saturday. And I talked all week about Interstate Daydream. The opportunity was to look at her as what they call in fantasy sports as a post-hype candidate. Because if you remember, when you go back to the winter at Oaklawn, when she had that big performance, the allowance performance, all of a sudden she became a big hype filly, and the fantasy perhaps, and that she was going to show up in a big spot, and now she was part of the picture going forward. Well, she got an 89 buyer in her seasonal debut, and from that point, she clearly regressed. She basically set the pace in that Ashland, and she was vulnerable late to a couple of nice fillies. I mean, she got beat by Nest and Cocktail Moments. So why is she relegated in this race? And really, she wasn't. She was third choice. She was 6-1. And that was very palatable. I think she was 6-1 on the morning line, in fact, now that I think about it. And so she goes off at her morning line price. And the way that racetrack was playing, she was terrific, but she got every advantage to stay up on the pace. Adair Manor ran very well for Sean McCarthy. And I thought Shook silly from way back. Joel Rosario there. Did you see Joel do the same thing up the rail with radio days from an impossible, from the 11 hole, came all the way, found his way to the rail, which is something he does on a regular basis. And obviously he tried the same gambit in the Preakness. But this was a good race, and this thing graded out quite nicely. There's a lot of nice fillies on the scene, the 3-year-olds, but Interstate Daydream and Staten Flurry, what a nice win for him. He's got a nice operation, that familiar jacket with the snowflake on it, and Interstate Daydream. You probably look for her toward the Mother Goose Coaching Club, etc. The Alabama track.
Yeah, and you mentioned radio days, and given, as we've talked about, the way the track was playing, that move up the rail, that was kind of impressive, and only the 6 career starts. So radio days, a nice performance there as well. Wanted to hit on just a couple more performances from Friday. I thought, speaking of Shug, I thought First Captain was impressive in the Pimlico Special. We'll watch the stretch run here. Vindictive for Pletcher and Untreated for Pletcher, the 1 and the 3 kind of take the lead, and you think they're in a good spot. But the way he does, First Captain gets rolling in the stretch, on the stretch out to the mile and 3/16. Seems to appreciate it. Did on Friday, and First Captain gets it done under Luis Saez, as I say. And what I thought was a pretty nice looking performance, lifetime best buyer of 98.
Well, this is one of those efforts that kind of lifts his head, because to be honest, it felt like up until then, First Captain was kind of blind without a cane.
Yeah.
And, I give Suge a lot of credit because it almost felt like a desperation move. Nick Tamaro and I on Friday, we were talking about this, and I said to Nick point blank, I said, what do you think this says about, where First Captain is in his career that Suge is doing this? And, the Nick sort of said the same thing that I was thinking, which is, I don't know where else are we supposed to run with him, and what are we supposed to do with him? So this actually opens up, a whole new avenue. I suppose the Suburban and obviously the Whitney. Terry Finley said, did I hear that correctly? Terry Finley said, we're going to look to the Whitney, and the Whitney, it's 11 weeks away. You could run in the Foster. You could run in the Foster or the Suburban in between, though. I mean, I'll find out from Suge tomorrow or Tuesday on radio, but this is a big win for First Captain's career.
Yeah,
He's now a 3-time graded stake winner. Yeah.
Yeah, no question about it. And on the stretch out, seemed to appreciate that, which was a big question mark. So a nice win. And one more wanted to touch on. You and I were talking about it before we came on the air on Friday. The DuPont Distaff, a mile and an eighth. And just watching this race, it was kind of fun watching them come down the stretch. Super quick. The number 4 is going to get it done. Florentino, Norm Cassie, but wearing the Mary Lou Whitney silks was kind of, as I say, kind of fun for those of us up in this area to watch. And you can see it is a huge performance. The chart margin is over 14 lengths, so automatically you're impressed. But then, and I'll tout you as being a good resource after big stakes days, you typically tweet out the buyer figures, and when I pulled up your tweet that had the buyer, a 107 buyer for Super Quick on Friday. This was huge.
This is a freaky performance. Now, granted, she had everything her own way because Lil King's Princess scratched out of this race, and that really changed the whole complexion. That was the John Ortiz filly that is really nothing but a one-dimensional speed type, and when she came out, it left Super Quick as absolute lone speed. And to be honest, not that I'm rooting against John Hendrickson and Mary Lou from the great Whitney Estate in the Sky. I'm with Gary Siaka and with Lou Lazzanero, and we're trying to get Exotic West. We're trying to get her a win, and so there was nothing really Javier could do. Javier Castellano, Exotic West ran fine. There was just no catching Super Quick, and we'll have to see what happens. Norm Cassie, I'll have him on the next day or so, and we'll see what his thoughts are. But that was like an avalanche, like a snowball rolling downhill.
Yeah,
and just gaining momentum. It was crazy.
Yeah, previous lifetime best buyer was 89, and it was a 107 on Friday. Just an incredible performance. And yeah, I feel for Gary and Louis Lazzanero because they just ran into a completely freakish performance. They were a very nice second in the field down there, and venturing out of New York with Exotic West. But that was a freakish performance. Steve, before we let you go, I know just talking to you or listening to you over the past few days, you were going to make a visit to Country Life Farm, and I believe you were going to see one of your foals. So how'd the visit go, and how's the youngster?
Well, we did not actually get a chance to get up to Country Life because the night we were going to go, Wednesday, there's an accident on 695, and that was it. I mean, because they're up in Falston, which is north of Baltimore. It's a good 50 minutes from Pimlico, and so I got about halfway, and that was that. And so we ended up having to abandon that trip. But I'm going back down when we go to Virginia to Colonial. We're going to come back up through that way, and so we'll do it when we come back. Tina and I've got the next big working trip is Haskell. We'll do a couple of days in Jersey before the Haskell, and then after Haskell, we go to Virginia for the Colonial Cup for 3 days. and
Wait, you're not going to be down in New York for Belmont?
Well, yeah, that's not a trip. I mean, that's not.
I don't know. I don't
It
know
might
what
be a trip for you.
I don't. Well, I don't know what your definition of trip is exactly, I guess.
Well, my definition is going to Jersey and Virginia, and then we're going to come up back through. We're going to do that Eastern Shore again, that like we did yesterday, but we didn't get to see all of it. We're going to, instead of coming back up from Virginia on the mainland side, we're going to go to Newport News and Norfolk, and then go across the isthmus there and go to Chincoteague and Assateague and see the wild horses on the big
Oh, wow. Very nice. And I also liked your little Twitter tour of the historic neighborhood the other day. That was kind of cool.
Well, that is the most remarkable thing you will ever see in an urban setting. This is a little village that was a mill. Essentially, it was a mill town. And certainly those of us in upstate New York, we know about these kinds of sort of forgotten mill towns. Right outside, I'll give you one right in our shadow of Saratoga is Victory Mill.
Yeah.
It's like a little hamlet that it ceased to exist 50 years ago. Dickeyville there was a little manufacturing mill on a river, on a small river, and this is just about 2.5 miles south of Pimlico, and right near Security. For those that know Maryland and know that is the vicinity, Security is the home of the Social Security Administration, and was basically a incorporated when the Social Security Administration located there. This is just between Pimlico and Security, and you wouldn't know. There's like a big wooded area, and if you're on a main drag, which is Forest Park, you would drive right by this, and you see a sign, Dickeyville. So one afternoon after the show, this is probably 5 years ago, I said, I'm going to drive in here. So I drive in. This is a thing that dates back to 1800. And it's a just incredible village. There was a beautiful inn that's now like a community space. Then there's all the private homes. It is so remarkable, and it's sitting within the city limits of Baltimore. And I've brought it up with people that have lived in the area their whole life that don't even know it exists. It's amazing to me, and I visit every year. I love it. There's so many things in Baltimore Baltimore is suffering from this terrible image that The Wire and now this new show, this We Own This City. There's this terrible image, and it's so unfair because it's just a gorgeous, gorgeous community, and they're trying hard. The Pimlico redevelopment project. It's not on hold. It's moving forward, but there's a lot of complexities to it. But it's going to happen, and at the same time, Laurel's going to be redeveloped. For those that hold themselves back from going to Preakness, don't. There's probably one more year of Pimlico as we know it before they start to dismantle the building to get ready, for the new facility. You really should get down. You should get down there.
Yeah, absolutely.
I absolutely love being there. All those pictures that I put out, the history there is unique. It's such a great town. You go downtown, the B&O Railroad Museum is amazing, and there's the nutshell studies of unexplained death that in the coroner's office, which is one of my favorite oddities anywhere in the world. There's so much going on. It's always worth a trip.
Yeah, I don't think you're alone. I think a lot of people find that second jewel of the Triple Crown one of their favorite spots. Andy obviously down in the winner's circle with Chad and Seth Klarman after the win in the Preakness, and he makes the trip down every year. And a lot of other people seem to on social media enjoy the Preakness in the Baltimore area. And you're right, when they kind of made the plans for redoing the Preakness. They put out the artist rendering, what was it, a year or two ago, and it looks like, it'll be a very nice venue when all those changes are made. But I'd love to get down there, certainly. And I'll tell people to go to your Twitter feed as well and pick up that little tour of the unique neighborhood and more on your Twitter feed. But Steve, appreciate the visit. As always, the conversation. Folks can, of course, catch up to all the recap action on the radio show this week as well. Give my best to Tina and drive safely.
You can give your best to Tina. She's sitting. I'm not driving. She's doing the driving. You're she said that's nothing new. Seth says.
Hi, Seth.
There you go. Say hi in the Capital District.
Hi, Seth. Happy Sunday.
Happy Sunday. Tina, you drive safely.
She will. Thanks, Seth. Thanks, everybody.
Appreciate it. Steve Bick, Sirius and XM's At the Races. And again, if you tune in over the next few days, they will do a comprehensive recap. As he alluded to, he'll bring in all the big names. He does a great job. And day in and day out, not 365 days a year because he's only weekdays. And he does take a couple of weeks towards the end of the year. But plenty of great racing coverage on Mr. Bick's radio show. And we appreciate him stopping in this morning for some recap action. I'll also recap, I mentioned it as we were talking about the results yesterday. I had the bankroll out here. Didn't knock it out. I had $1,500. With $1,500, you want to knock it out of the park. And I did not knock it out of the park. But I felt okay. It was a tough day given the prices. And again, I had a couple of just really close calls. Caratari and 7 cents. I hammered that exacta, and I wind up getting nosed out a second for the exacta there. There was another exacta that I just wound up a little bit. And as I say, if Cogburn had won the Chick Lang, would have hit the Rainbow Six, which I don't know what it would have paid exactly because Lightning Larry, the winner in that race, obviously juiced it up. I want to say I think it paid about $1,500 as it was. So with Cogburn, I wasn't going to get that level, but I would have added a few $100s more certainly to what we had yesterday. And I'd also had some money on Cogburn. So if Cogburn had won, that would have been nice. Oh, set piece and a tone. Again, I got necked out at the second for that exacta. So there were some near misses. And as I say, it was tough. You're trying to, on those days, hit some nice plays, and so I had some pick fours that included some prices in there, and it just didn't work out that way. We hit an early pick four that barely paid anything. The late pick four ending with early voting, we had a buck on that. That turned out okay. It was 140. It wasn't huge. I want to say the first 3 winners were $5, $5, and less than $5, right? What was the race just before early? Jackson Traveler was that wasn't the race just before. The race just before was Caratari, who $4. So it's $5, $5, $4, and then early voting kind of kicked it up, and so we wound up with a little something there. But I had those short prices in the first 3. I also had some other horses. If we get a little price there, that makes that pick 4 a little something. So you're shopping around to get some prices, but it was that kind of a card looking on it where it seemed like, maybe I'm just going to have to hammer some logicals, and we tried and came up just that short with a few exactas, or we easily could have had, with a little bit of racing luck, another, probably, given the way I played some of those exactas, probably easily another $500, $600, $700 in the pool. But the way it turned out, and again, I hit some things early. I hit the little pick 4, I hit a triple and a couple things early. It just wasn't, I was mixing in some prices. We weren't getting those. So we came into the Preakness with $180 in the pool, in the treasure chest. Winnings we had put aside, $180. And I had $1,500, and so that is not going to be a great day. So I came into the Preakness, and I still had $220 left to play in the Preakness itself, and so then you're kind of trying to think triple, super, what do I do here? I looked at the exacta payouts, the probable pays, and I thought, you know what, I'm just going to go heavy with my 2 play. I think Epicenter and early vote. I think Epicenter is clearly best. I think early voting might be that good. As I say, in pick bets, I had used them kind of equally. And so I thought I'll just go strong here and take my 200 and pop it. And so I did it. I went stronger epicenter over early voting, and then I had a big exacta with early voting and epicenter, and it was a $24.60, $25.80, excuse me, exacta that we had multiple times. I also had a little money on the triple. Just I had a few dollars left, and I played some triple action. Had a little bit on that, and we did cash on that late pick 4 for some money. So all said and done, collected right around $1,000 out of the Preakness, added to the other money. So we wound up with almost $1,200, well, over $1,100 subsequently, which, as I say, coming into the Preakness, it had to hustle a little bit for that. But for everybody that was here yesterday and on the bankroll team, they wound up with, I think, about $30 of free money, courtesy of Capital OTB. Again, you're looking to knock it out of the park. It was just a hard day to do it. There weren't a lot of opportunities to knock it out of the park. I was trying to kind of inch along with some hefty, exacta plays and whatnot, and got just edged out. And, again, Cogburn wins. We get the Rainbow Six. We get a couple of those exactas. As I say, it easily could have been another $600 or $700 or more in there with just a little bit of racing luck. But I felt pretty good, kind of bailing out a little bit for the team in the Preakness itself, and having the big exacta play that allowed everybody to walk away with a little bit of free money. Bankrolls are fun, a little stressful, but fun. And when you can make it happen at the end there, that's fun too for folks. And when everybody can walk away with a little bit of free dough, that's always good. And we appreciate everybody who showed up. Nice crowd out here in the Racebook yesterday for the Preakness. We appreciate that. Don't forget, we're open on racing days down here, and that includes today. If you want to come down and get out of the heat and enjoy the racing action today here at the Clubhouse Racebook, we'd love to have you come on down. We have a new concessionaire in our restaurant you can come check out. They have great food. I have tried it already. You can sit at the bar and have a cold beer as well to take the edge off a hot day like this, and watch all the racing action as well right here at the Clubhouse Racebook. I'll be back a little bit later this afternoon. There it is, Clubhouse Racebook, 711 Central. And if you've never been, we're right off I-90. You pop onto Everett Road and head out to Central Avenue, and we're right around the corner in the ShopRite Plaza, just around the corner from Everett Road. So if you've never been, very convenient. They're like a minute and a half from I-90. I'll be back this afternoon. I'm going to take a look at a little Monmouth, some Belmont, maybe some Churchill. We'll throw a third track in there to look at as well. Be back in probably about an hour and a half or so with OTB Live for a Sunday afternoon as we wrap up a week and a weekend. That was a lot of fun. Second jewel of the Triple Crown now in the books. And it sounds like early voting, it seemed like Seth Klarman and Chad Brown were not particularly enamored with heading to the Belmont Stakes. So we will see as we get into this week. We'll probably start to get more of a feel for how the Belmont is going to shape up. That said, regardless of how I think the Belmont Stakes is going to be a nice race. I think they'll get a nice field, competitive field. I think it'll be a fun race. But boy, I think the undercard stakes races, including, we talked a little bit about it yesterday, Flightline and Speaker's Corner maybe, and some nice runners potentially. Met Mile, that could be one for the ages there. And so 3 weeks from yesterday, big day down in New York. Looking forward to it. But looking forward to this afternoon as well, and giving some thoughts out on the racing action for a Sunday. Hopefully you had a nice Preakness and were able to find some value various places. And again, the value that worked out for me in the bankroll, I'm sure probably worked out for other people, because Steve Bick was right. You looked up at the board, and if, like me, you thought the two best horses seem to be Epicenter and early voting. And as I say, I was using them in kind of equal fashion in picks, not quite. Epicenter having been proven, early voting having the talent to be that good. And you looked up and you saw 5-1. Maybe you wound up doing well also. I hope you did. So I hope you come in today flush. If you floundered a little bit yesterday, today is a new day. So we'll see if we can give out some ideas on the action on this Sunday afternoon to get us all up to the windows cashing tickets. That's going to be the game plan. As always, I appreciate your tuning in on this Sunday morning edition of Racing Across America. I'm Seth Merrow. Thanks for joining us. And as I say, we'll be back in about an hour and a half or so with OTB Live for a Sunday afternoon. We'll see you then.
You're watching OTB TV, a service of Capital Off Track Betting.